We don't like to talk about consequences. I loved what he said today. But I have free will. Out of the mouths of babes. Yes, we have free will. We could choose to do whatever we want, but again, there's consequences. And God is asking us to give that free will basically back to Him. To freely give it back to Him and say, yes, I will follow your commandments because it's what's best for me. And by doing that, others pay attention, don't they? They watch what you're doing. They watch how you live. You know, there's one thing we always taught our kids. I said, when you live your life, do so in a way that if you are ever accused of anything, people are not going to believe it because that's not you.
We've been holding on so tightly that we think is what we want, and let God move us how He wants.
You gotta love it though, don't you? Just hear that. Just hear that excitement. That is wonderful. How many, and I gotta ask this, so to be honest and not lie, how many of you came into church like that? Got a few. I saw some pretty grumpy little faces though too that came into church. We should be excited. We should be shatterboxes. We should be excited, wanting to learn, anticipation that what God has in store for us today. Well, today it may look like kind of a grumpy topic. Did you see the message title? Nope, nobody looked. Laws, laws, laws. Rules, rules, rules. Does that sound like a fun thing? Not really. Not so much. Well, God may seem like a lot of laws. He started in Exodus. He gave the Israelites the 10 Commandments. If I was to ask right now, how many here could recite all 10 Commandments? It wouldn't necessarily have to be in order, but yeah, I got some of them they're thinking. Okay, well, I would encourage you to go home and revisit those. Jog your memory. The interesting thing is, well, it may sound like rules. Let's hear what they are. So the first one is, he said, you shall have no other gods before me. Now, where were they living? They were living in pagan territory where everybody was worshiping every other kind of god possible. And God's establishing a relationship. He's like, no, I am your one and only God. You're not going to worship anybody else. 2, don't make any graven images or idols, because who were the idols and images of? The pagan gods. God's saying, no, I am so much more than a piece of wood or a piece of metal. 3, you shall not take the Lord's name in vain. Ooh, how many of us would hear that? That is one of my biggest pet peeves. It's when people take the Lord's name in vain. 4, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. 5, honor your mother and father. 6, you shall not murder. 7, you shall not commit adultery. 8, you shall not steal. 9, you shall not bear false witness, which means lie, gossip. And 10, you shall not covet your neighbor's stuff. Well, that may seem like a lot. That's 10 commandments. Yeah, but we're going to look a little more. So then Leviticus comes along. And this is after the priests have been established, and then God gives them, sorry, this is going to be a little more challenging hanging onto a mic. So God gives them, was it 247 other laws in Leviticus, although those 10 are actually included. 247. And those may seem kind of weird. How many people here have actually read the book of Leviticus and not fallen asleep? One hand went up and then it went down. Yeah, I have. Nobody has. That's the problem. When people decide that they're going to read the Bible and they start with Genesis, and that's pretty cool. And then guess what they hit? You get into Leviticus and Deuteronomy and Numbers, and everybody starts falling asleep, and they go, well, enough with that. And they quit reading. Well, the problem is there was all these laws, but that was really for the Jews. And again, the reason for the laws, it was to set them apart. They were chosen. They were God's people. He was wanting them to know that you are not going to do what all of the pagan people are doing. You are mine. This is how I want you to live. And there's reasons for that. Okay? Then, if you look in Leviticus, I love this in chapter 26. It says, the heading is the reward for obedience. God doesn't just say, no, 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 don't. It's not just, thou shalt not. No, it's the rewards. It's the why you shouldn't. And this is what will happen when you obey. He says, if you follow my decrees and are careful to obey my commandments, I will send you rain in its season, and the ground will yield crops, and the trees in the field their fruit. Your threshings will continue until grape harvest, and the grape harvest will continue until planting, and you will eat all the food you want and live in safety in your land. And then he says, if you obey me, I will grant you peace. I will grant you security, and I will give you my favor. But the interesting thing is, when you turn the page, then it's what'll happen if you're disobedient. And I am not this talented. I'm sorry. I can't juggle all this. I never could juggle. That's why I'm a magician, because juggling just was out of my talent. The next one is the punishment for the disobedience. He starts out, if you don't listen and you don't carry out my commands, if you reject my decrees, you will plant seed in vain. You're going to plant it and it isn't going to grow. I'm not going to give you the rain. And then he goes on, then if you can still continue to disobey, he said, after this and not listen to me, I will punish you for your sins 7 times over. And then if you still remain hostile to me, it just keeps getting worse and worse. But he doesn't just lower the hammer down immediately. There is a progression. If you look, this is still in chapter 26, but if you turn the page and you look at verse 14, there's the gradual. Have you done this as parents? Have you laid down the laws for your kids and then you said, okay, but if you don't do this, then this is going to happen. And if you don't do that, then this is going to happen, right? You just keep upping the ante until they finally decide to behave. And the last one is, says, in spite of it all, if you still do not listen to me, but want to continue to be hostile, then in my anger, I'm going to be hostile towards you, and I'm going to punish you. So laws. That's where the Pharisees kind of come in. So we said there was 247 laws just from Leviticus. And we look at the Bible and we look at the Old Testament, it goes all the way to Micah, and then it ends. We end with just the high priest and the 247 laws. And when we pick up in the New Testament in the Gospel of Luke, what do we find? Oh, wow, now all of a sudden we have synagogues, and we have Sadducees, we have Pharisees, we have Essenes, we have all these different fractions and all these different people and all these politics. And you're like, wait a minute, what happened in those 400 years? Well, that's what happened, laws. They started dividing among themselves. They started squabbling. They started getting a hierarchy. And when Jesus comes on the scene, the Pharisees have now given them 613 laws. The 247 were in there, but they added the extra ones. There were so many laws, and you got to realize back then there wasn't really a way of writing it down for the common man to see. So they had to try to memorize these. It was such a burden besides all the laws from the Romans. Think about that. Do we know about that? I started looking just for curiosity. I was wondering how many laws that we have on the books right here in America at this point in time. Did you know I could not even find an answer? The closest I could get was from 2007. And at that point, we had 1.5 million laws right here in America. And then there isn't any other recordings of what I could find of exact laws until 2010, and they had added another 10,620, did I say 10,000? 40,627 laws. That was in 2010. And from then, I could not find any other recorded numbers. Now, I can guarantee it wasn't because they got rid of laws. Every year, it keeps going up and up. I tried to look to see how many laws were on the books for Nebraska. I couldn't even get a definite answer of that. All I could get was the number of all the categories that the laws fell under. Wow. So the only thing I could find was in this last year, Nebraska implemented another 116 new laws. And since October 7th of this year, President Biden signed in 64 consecutive orders, 37 presidential memorandas, 139 proclamations, and 23 notices. He's not even the one that's done the most. Roosevelt actually did the most. So when you think about that, so in my last congregation, we have a lawyer in there. And I asked him, I said, so do you know all those 1.5 million plus laws? No, had no clue. It's like, how could we ever even know what those laws are? We don't even know they existed. How on earth could we even begin to follow them and not break them? And I got to thinking about when I was a kid growing up. We had a principal that he was interesting. But he really put down the hammer a lot, and he was a great one for wanting to implement new rules. You know, God forbid we would just even adhere and uphold the few rules we had. No, every time somebody broke a rule, we just had to keep adding more. And the only time I ever got detention in my life was when I was a junior in high school, because I had eaten lunch in the cafeteria, and my daily routine was I walked across the stage so I didn't get hit by a basketball to go to the restroom before my afternoon classes. Well, what I didn't know was, while I was in eating lunch, he got mad and implemented a new rule that nobody could walk across the stage. So, since I walked across the stage, I got detention. Mind you, I didn't even know the rule. Made me think about Harry Potter. Who here are Harry Potter nuts? Did you read the books, watch the movies? Yeah, I got a few, okay. Well, I hate to say I've watched them and I couldn't tell you anything about them. Don't remember. There's only one thing. And you probably know where I'm going on this. There was only one thing that I remember from any of those movies. And that was the same thing. They get mad, and they would tack more rules up on the wall on tablets, right? And so there was just this whole wall was full of nothing but tablets of rules and rules. Well, that's how the Jews were feeling at that time. There's 613 rules. We can't possibly know what they are, and how can we possibly follow them? And the Pharisees were trying to trap Jesus, because his teachings were simple. They were so the common man can understand them. And so one to trip him up, they said, "Teacher, tell us, which one of these 613 is the greatest law?" And Jesus looks at him, and he does not even talk about the 613. He doesn't even talk about all the Leviticus rules. He goes all the way back to Exodus, to the 10 Commandments. And he takes those 10 Commandments and he splits them into two. What did we say were the top 10? The first 4, thou shalt not have any other gods before me. Don't make a graven image. Do not take my name in vain. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Those 4 things he puts into one commandment, which is what? Love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your mind. And then he takes the next 6, which is what? Starts with honor your father and mother. Don't murder, don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't gossip, don't covet. He takes all of those and he condenses them into one commandment and says what? Love your neighbor as yourself. He takes all 613 rules and he condenses them down to just 2. I want you to think about that. If you are loving God with all of your heart, with all your soul, all your mind, what are you going to want to do? You're going to want to please him, right? So you're not going to want to take his name in vain because you revere him. You're going to want to worship him on Sunday. You're not going to follow other gods. You're not going to do anything that would taint that reputation, that the relationship that you have with him. And if you're loving your neighbor as yourself, you're not going to hurt that neighbor, are you? You're not going to steal from them. You're not going to gossip about them. You're not going to envy them so much that you wish you had what they had. And you're going to honor your mom, even when she tells you don't run across the road. That's simple. He took all that complexity and brought it down to just 2. But that's kind of a tall order, isn't it? You know, I said I loved having those youth groups, especially the junior high. I do so much better with that upper range, the junior high and the high school, because I was a strong-willed child when I was younger, still am. I don't mind following the rules if they make sense. If they don't make sense, I have a hard time. And I have to question. I have to know the why. It's a wonder I'm still alive. But I was constantly asking Mom, why? Why? And that's what I love with that junior high to high school range, because we can not just talk about the rules, but I can tell them the why. Just like in Leviticus, he told you, if you do this, this is the rewards that you're going to get. If you don't do this, this is the consequences that are going to result from your bad actions. If you steal from somebody and you get caught, is that going to be a good or a bad consequence? That's why he says, don't do it. We don't like to talk about consequences. I loved what he said today. But I have free will. Out of the mouths of babes. Yes, we have free will. We could choose to do whatever we want. But again, there's consequences. And God is asking us to give that free will basically back to him. To freely give it back to him and say, yes, I will follow your commandments because it's what's best for me. And by doing that, others pay attention, don't they? They watch what you're doing. They watch how you live. You know, there's one thing we always taught our kids. I said, when you live your life, do so in a way that if you are ever accused of anything, people are not going to believe it because that's not you. It's pretty powerful. Have you ever been accused of something falsely? And when you were accused, did others believe it right away? Oh, yeah, that sounds like him. Or did they say, oh, I can't believe that. They'd never do that. That's not how they live. That's a question only you can answer. So I want you to go home this week. Go home today. Go back through Exodus. Maybe even write them down. Jot them down a little bit so that way they can be in the front of your brain so you know the commandments. But then break it down to just those 2 and why they're important. Because they encompass everything. Jesus takes the complex and he makes it so simple. And then he says, go and live that way. So that way, if anyone should ever accuse you of anything else, others can say, that's not them, because they live for Jesus. Amen.